Traoré has just landed in Moscow, but not for the usual handshakes or peace talks. Something far more intriguing is unfolding. So why is one of Africa's boldest leaders standing on one of Russia's most important stages? Let's break it down. When Traoré arrived in Moscow on May 8, 2025, it wasn't for routine talks or peace discussions. His presence sent a much louder message. This wasn't just diplomacy, it was a powerful political and psychological statement. May 9th is Russia's biggest military holiday, a day when the country remembers its World War II victory and shows the world it hasn't forgotten its past. Usually, the spotlight is on tanks, missiles, and military parades. But this year, the cameras also followed a 36-year-old African president, dressed in military uniform, walking silently among global leaders. In a place where African leaders were rarely noticed, Traoré stood tall, not as a guest, but as someone rewriting the rules. His appearance wasn't about showing support, it was about claiming space where Africa was once left out. Russia's Victory Day has always been about honoring its fight against Western fascism, not as a memory, but as a warning. We're still here. We won't be erased. It's a message aimed directly at NATO. And now, Traoré joins that message not by looking back, but by connecting it to Africa's present-day struggle against foreign control. By standing next to President Putin, Traoré isn't just watching history, he's making it. These two men, different in many ways, are now united by a shared refusal to bow to Western dominance. Their alliance isn't about land or politics, it's about mindset. Even though Russia and Burkina Faso are miles apart in size and power, their message is the same. You were wrong to think we'd stay down. The most powerful part? Traoré chose to show up where many Western leaders refused to go. NATO skipped the event. European nations stayed away. But Traoré stood in Red Square anyway, and the world paid attention. Once dismissed as a rebellious soldier with a gun, Traoré is now being recognized on the global stage, respected, not lectured. That image of him standing shoulder to shoulder with a world power means something deeper to Africans everywhere. For decades, African leaders were flown to Paris or Washington just to be told what to do. Traoré flipped that script. He didn't go there, he went here. And that choice alone speaks volumes. Victory Day may not be Africa's celebration, but this year it became a shared battleground where Africa's modern fight for independence and Russia's historical resistance to Western control met in the open. The handshake between Traoré and Putin wasn't just about friendship. It was a challenge to the world order created after World War II, a system that ignored African pain and pride. Now, for the first time, Africa isn't just asking to be seen. It's walking into the spotlight on its own terms. What we saw during the military parade was only one part of the story. The real action began after the cameras stopped rolling. Traoré didn't come to Moscow just to walk in a parade. He came with purpose, to negotiate, to build new partnerships, and to shift alliances. He came to prepare for the economic, military, and mental battles that Africa is already facing, not in the future, but right now. And what was said behind the closed doors of the Kremlin between Putin and Traoré could shape the future of that fight. So what really happened in those private meetings? Before we explore that, if you're interested in more African, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Now, let's continue. The world saw the pictures, the ceremonies, the handshakes, the roaring jets, and the rolling tanks. But what truly mattered started once the cameras were turned off and the parade was over. That public display was just the cover. Traoré came for the quiet talks, the ones that shaped the future. but never make the headlines. Those discussions, held in the private halls of the Kremlin, were about more than friendship. They were about strategy. Africa is on a new kind of battlefield, one that's about alliances, survival, and breaking free from old systems. And Burkina Faso isn't just looking for symbolic support, it's building something real and lasting. This new direction isn't about nice speeches, it's about having real power to protect its independence. In this vision, Russia isn't just an ally, it's a strategic partner. The days of Traoré begging the West for help, only to be ignored or undermined, are over. He came to Moscow with a clear mission: to secure the tools Burkina Faso needs so it never has to depend on Paris again. And the Russians are ready to provide them. According to early reports and diplomatic sources, the talks covered serious partnerships, not handouts. Russia is offering cooperation in exchange for mutual benefit, not charity. The first major topic? Military support. Until now, Burkina Faso has survived using outdated weapons, leftover French arms, and unstable regional supply lines. But Traoré wants a full upgrade, including military training based on real battlefield experience, not NATO playbooks. Radar systems and air defense tech, anti-drone tools, and secure communication networks. It's about more than guarding borders. It's about preventing coups, stopping foreign surveillance, and defending national independence. It's survival by design. Next comes energy. Even though Burkina Faso isn't a major oil producer, it still faces risks when others control its energy supply. That's why Russian energy companies, including branches of Gazprom and Rosatom, are looking at ways to help. This includes trade deals like grain for energy exchanges, small-scale nuclear power, and solar hybrids to power cities without falling into debt traps disguised as green aid. One big idea: fuel imports backed by gold, not US dollars. That would shield the economy from sanctions and currency shocks, giving Burkina Faso a way to grow without being pulled back into Western control. In return, Russia gains broader access to the region's gold routes and rare earth minerals, along with a reliable ally in the Sahel. But perhaps the most groundbreaking part of this partnership lies in the digital space, especially around cybersecurity and technological independence. Traoré's government has faced digital attacks. Fake news campaigns, satellite tracking, and cyber intrusions, all attempts to destabilize his leadership. What the West calls freedom of information, Traoré sees as another form of control, a kind of digital colonization. Algorithms made in Silicon Valley don't just share news. They shape opinions, track dissent, and distort the truth. This was a key focus during the talks in Moscow. Russia offered something powerful: a digital defense system similar to what Iran, Belarus, and Syria have designed not just to filter internet content, but to block psychological operations and high-level spying by foreign powers. These tools protect national independence in the digital age. Traoré isn't just defending his government, he's protecting how Africans think, communicate, and imagine their own future. Predictably, the West has already labeled this move as censorship. But that's not the real issue. What truly worries them is that Africa may now be building a new kind of resistance, not just on the ground, but in the digital world too. Traoré and other African leaders are starting to shape their own data, their own narratives, and even their own digital systems. Then there's the currency issue, a topic that follows Traoré wherever he goes. Along with Mali and Niger, Burkina Faso has openly criticized the CFA franc, a colonial-era currency still controlled by France. But replacing it with another Western-backed option would only continue the same problem. So a different idea is forming in Moscow. Instead of using dollars or euros, Regional trade would rely on real assets gold, grain, energy, and be run through Russia's SPFS system, an alternative to SWIFT. This would let countries in the AES alliance bypass Western banking rules, avoid IMF pressure, and escape Europe's financial grip. Trade would look like this: gold for grain, uranium for weapons, infrastructure for long-term supplies, all without touching a single Western currency. This isn't just economic policy. It's a smart, strategic kind of psychological warfare. For the first time, African nations are deciding who tracks their money and who sets the rules. Of course, none of these deals will be shown to the public, at least not yet. The West is watching closely. NATO has Burkina Faso on its radar. The IMF will likely ramp up the pressure. The EU will start offering new assistance dressed up as loans, hiding the same old traps. But Traoré's move can't be reversed. He didn't go to Moscow to escape anything. He went there to establish something permanent. He's locking Burkina Faso into a new global system, one that won't be easy to break without a fight. And that's what makes it so dangerous to the West. A young African president who's no longer begging for favors, just asking to be left alone. But this isn't just about weapons, cables, or contracts. It's bigger than any deal. What Traoré is building isn't just a strategy. He's creating a new story, a myth in motion. A new story is forming, one that redefines what African power looks like. And what about that story? It's spreading fast. So what does this moment mean for everyday Africans, the youth, the silenced, the frustrated? You can buy weapons. You can trade for fuel. You can even sign cybersecurity deals with a global giant. But true belief, can't be bought or forced. When Traoré walked across Red Square in Moscow, it did more than seal an alliance. It sent a signal. It woke something up, a kind of emotional jolt across a continent where young people have grown tired, disillusioned, and used to broken promises. For years, they've seen nothing but foreign debts, collapsing democracies, leaders who sell out, and constitutions written outside Africa. So most never imagined they'd witness an African leader walk shoulder to shoulder with global power without flinching. But now they have. And it's changed something. No official statement could ever explain what that moment did. It was in the silence, in the screenshots shared across phones, in the quiet sense of pride that filled streets from Bamako to Niamey to Ouagadougou. People didn't need commentary. They saw the image. On a day celebrating empire, a young African man stood beside Putin, not as someone begging, not as a sidekick, not as a token, but as an equal. That single image was more powerful than any report or political speech. To every African child who has only seen their leaders kneel, beg, or be sold, it sent a new message. You don't have to follow that path. And on a continent where so many were told independence was won, only to find their lives ruled by loans, rankings, and foreign diplomats, there's now a hunger for something real, something bold. Traoré has stepped into a space that goes beyond politics. It's emotional. It's spiritual. He's becoming what Sankara never got the chance to fully become, a living symbol of African resistance. But symbols carry weight, and they come with danger. Because while many African elites forget, the West remembers one hard truth. It's easier to kill a person than it is to kill what they represent. They tried to erase Sankara. They tried to silence Lumumba. They tried to bury Nkrumah in exile. But their legacy lived on. Why? Because the people held on to it. And now, Traoré is stepping directly into that legacy, not posthumously, but while still breathing, still leading, still putting policies into action that match his message. And the youth? They're watching every step. This generation is different. They grew up online. They have access to history, and they understand the politics behind what's happening. They've seen the patterns. They've watched their governments take trips to Paris, begging for aid. They've seen leaders shaking hands with Macron one day, then arresting peaceful protesters the next. They've been told to be patient, while their country's gold and lithium are shipped off to companies no one's heard of. So when they see Traoré standing confidently in the Kremlin, it's not just a win for Burkina Faso, it's a release, a deep emotional shift for millions of Africans who've been waiting for a reason to believe again in African power. But belief is fragile. It doesn't come easy, and once it's sparked, it has to be protected. That's why this moment is so sensitive. Because the West has other ways of crushing symbols, not always through war, but by twisting narratives, cutting people off, and planting corruption from within. So don't be surprised when the media attacks increase, when NGOs start investigating human rights in Burkina Faso, or when every move is framed to look suspicious. Why? Because if young Africans begin to see Traoré as a real model, not just a dream, the foundations of global control start to shake. The real fight is no longer on the battlefield. It's in the mind. If Traoré can reach the imagination of the next generation, he won't need to fight every battle himself. They'll carry it forward, becoming the leaders, journalists, fighters, and builders of tomorrow. But the West knows how to stop this. All they have to do is smear him, isolate him, or wear him down. Traoré knows this too. That's why every speech, every alliance, every policy choice matters. He's not only building a country, he's shaping a legend. That's why Moscow was such a turning point. Not just because it was Russia, but because an African leader stood beside global power and was taken seriously. Not mocked, not dismissed, not used. He was respected. And that image of a young African president welcomed as an equal changed everything for a generation that thought you had to fit in to gain power. This is what a new kind of belief looks like. But belief needs space to grow. And now, we face the most important question. Can this moment survive what's coming? The pressure, the bribes, the counter-moves, the lies. A single moment doesn't make history. What comes after does. That photo of Traoré next to Putin may last forever, but whether it means anything depends on whether African societies embrace the change or quietly return to the old ways that kept them weak and divided. Here's the hard truth. The West doesn't need to send tanks to stop Traoré. It just needs to wait. Wait for people to lose interest. Wait for the excitement to fade. Wait for internal problems, infighting, compromise, and disillusion to burn out the flame. That's how real change dies. Not with bullets, but with boredom. Not with assassinations, but with apathy. That's why the responsibility now falls on the people. And it's not a light burden, because the African public has been hurt before. They've seen bold movements hijacked, promises broken, and hope delayed again and again. They've watched passionate leaders rise and fall. They've seen anti-imperialism turn into empty slogans, and Pan-Africanism reduced to hashtags. Traoré offers something different. But if it stays as just a moment, just a symbol, it won't last. The idea has to become real in everyday life. That means turning the revolution into something you can feel in jobs, in food, in roads, in strong institutions that don't vanish when a new president arrives. It has to feed people, protect borders, and stand firm against corruption. It can't just be protected by soldiers. It needs farmers, students, journalists, union leaders, people ready to sacrifice comfort for something bigger than themselves. Traoré can't carry the weight alone. The vision has to be lived, not just admired. And here's where the cracks may begin to show. Because while Traoré tries to tear down the old system's corruption, elite rule, tribal games, and dependence, many of those systems still live inside African societies. And that's where the real fight continues. Our institutions still carry the deep scars of colonial rule. The truth is, we often divide ourselves before the West even has to try. If Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger truly want to build something free and lasting through the AES alliance, it won't be enough to just send foreign troops home or shake hands in Moscow. They'll need to completely rethink how leadership works. The education system must be designed around African lives and realities, not foreign models. They must stop selling raw resources for next to nothing and buying back finished products at sky-high prices. They'll need to trust each other more than they trust old colonial powers. And they'll have to build side by side without asking for approval, without hesitation. That kind of unity is something Africa has rarely seen on a wide scale. And no, it won't happen overnight. It won't be flashy. It won't trend on global news. But that's the only way to make what happened in Moscow truly matter in the long run. Because the West is already adjusting its strategies. They understand that Traoré isn't a one-off. They see the ripple effect. They see young people across Africa standing up, supporting him online, demanding that their own leaders stop acting like puppets and start showing backbone like the Sahel leaders. What scares them isn't Traoré's military, it's his sense of direction. But in today's noisy world, purpose is fragile. It can easily be drowned out by distractions, drama, or betrayal from within. That's why this fight won't be decided by force or fiery speeches. The real test will be quiet. It will come down to consistency and patience. In the end, it won't be Western interference that kills this movement. If it dies, it'll be us who let it. But if Africa stays focused, if people grow tired of waiting, tired of watching others shape their future, tired of explaining their pain to those who benefit from it, then May 8, 2025, won't be remembered as just another ceremony. It will be remembered as the day Africa stopped being a story told by outsiders and started writing its own. So now the spotlight is on us, not just Traoré. Are you ready? Or will you let this moment fade into just another forgotten myth? Let us know what you think in the comments. Do you support what Traoré stands for? Want more content like this? Tap the bell icon and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.